Hello again, fellow audiophiles. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of my podcast, Making Waves with WaveTheory. If you would like an audio-only version of this podcast so you can listen on the go or just not be in front of a screen, you can stream or download from Podbean, link down in the description. These episodes are also available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. Links down in the description. So head over to your platform of choice to listen, and please hit that follow button while you're there. All right, on with the show. Turn it down! All right, we've all heard that complaint at one point or another, right? And in this episode of Making Waves with WaveTheory, we're going to talk about one situation where that often happens, and that is watching movies and TV shows late at night when the kids have gone to bed, or if you live in an apartment, having a full-fledged home theater speaker system rumbling around is not always the best or an option that can even work for you. And that is where headphones can often come to the rescue. So in this episode, we're going to talk about tips and tricks and things to think about when you want to integrate your nice headphone system into your movie and TV watching experience. And for the most part, that's going to be in situations where you want to use headphones to watch movies or TV shows on your big TV in your main viewing area. If you're watching on a PC or a laptop at a desk, it's really no different than building any other headphone system, but here we're going to be talking about integrations into those systems that are primarily for watching things. Joining me to have that conversation will be a return guest, and that is Erik. Erik is a longtime audio friend of mine and also a patron, and he has quite a bit of experience solving this exact problem, where he's got a TV on one side of his room, and his listening position is on the other side of the room, and he has a rack of gear, nice headphone gear, sitting right next to his position on the couch, and he had to solve the problem of how he got audio signal from the video side on one side of the room to all of the audio stuff on the opposite side of the room, so he could watch shows and movies when his young children had gone to bed early or his wife was working on something else in the house. So I thought he would be an ideal guest to come in and talk about some of the solutions that he has come up with, and then I'll add some solutions that I have come up with as well. Unfortunately, there is no featured music artist in this episode because I'm out of them. So if you are a music artist or you know a music artist who would like some exposure before our music-loving hobby, please reach out to me and we'll get them in on a future episode. But for now, we'll do the groovy intro music and then we will get into it. Hey, WaveTheory again, quickly jumping back in to offer some quick clarity before we get rolling here. Number one, Erik and I really don't talk much about specific gear here in terms of specific headphones, DACs, or headphone amplifiers that we generally recommend just for listening to the audio part of video content. All right, so if you're looking for specific headphone, amp, DAC recommendations and all of that, really the suggestions here are no different than normal system building in terms of how you go about finding what you like and what works for you and that sort of thing. We really focus more on how to get the audio to your headphones in general, because if you're not sitting at a PC or a laptop and watching right off of a PC or a laptop, it can actually be a challenge to get a good, high-quality, clean audio signal from your video content to your headphones. And we kind of talk about why in here, and then also ideas on how to get around it. So as Erik explains his solution here, it's worth remembering that in his room, his television is on one wall and his seating position is on the opposite wall. And right next to his seating position is his headphone-based equipment rack where he had his DAC, his amplifier for headphones and all of that. So his task was to find a way to route the digital audio from his video-based content from one side of the room to the other. And he does a pretty good and thorough job of explaining like the things that he tried, the limitations of each one, and how he ended up solving those limitations with new gear. But I think that is helpful context as we get into this. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right. Welcoming back to the show is Erik. Erik was here to help us talk about building your main headphone rig back in episode 2, I believe it was, of this podcast. Yep. We are now in episode 10, and he's back to do system building part 2, and we're going to focus on using headphones to watch movies and TV shows, things of that nature. So building a headphone rig for watching video-based content. So first of all, Erik, how are you? And thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back. Thanks for inviting me back.
Of course.
Really enjoy these topics.
Yeah, so Erik and I have known each other for a few years now. I don't remember when we first started talking, but it's been a while. And I know that you've been through several iterations of trying to fine tune your movie watching rig for headphones. So I figured you'd be the guy to talk to. Let's just clarify for the audience real quick here before we dive in too deep that the kind of systems we'll be talking about here are like if you're trying to watch video-based content like on the big screen, so to speak. Like you've got your television on one side of the room and your couch on the opposite wall, that kind of thing. And you've got to figure out how to string wires and all of that kind of stuff to get to a headphone-based system there. Because truthfully, if you're sitting at your gaming PC and watching your movies and shows right on the screen of your PC or your laptop, it's not very interesting. You just use whatever headphone system you have as a matter of course here. But how do you do this when you're using a larger screen TV, your big 65-inch flat panel or whatever it is on one wall, and you're sitting in your couch or your chair, 10, 12 feet away, whatever the case may be? That's about 3 meters for the metric listeners out there, in there. So that's the use case we're focusing on because that's where things can get tricky. So I think a good way to structure this would just be to kind of like say, Erik, where did you start? And like, what were the pros and cons of each thing, each solution that you tried and so forth. So why don't you tell us where your journey on this began?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it started with my whole headphone journey really started with this because I had young kids and wanting to either watch shows at night or hold on to babies while they sleep. Can't have the surround sound system blasting in the house. And so headphones become a natural solution to it. With babies sleeping on your arms, closed back is even better, or IEMs.
Right. Or you're an apartment dweller and, your theater system's going to disturb the neighbors, all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of entryways to this type of problem. The apartment dweller, young kids that are sleeping, just someone in the next room that you don't want to disrupt, right? Now I have older kids, but they'll be doing homework or something and I'm trying to watch something in the room next door. It's less disruptive. Right? So it started off really simplistic for me, wanting to just be able to hear it, but not string wires everywhere and have it sound reasonably well. And so it, for me, really just started with using the Toslink output on the back of my TV into a SPDIF to Bluetooth converter, and then sending it Bluetooth across the room to a Bluetooth receiver that would convert it back to Toslink or coax with SPDIF, and then that into whatever I was listening to at the time. I forget kind of where it started. It was probably some topping E30 or some entry-level DAC from 5-6 years ago.
Okay, but just some little like desktop, DAC and headphone amp stack.
The equivalent of a $50 to $75 DAC, right? Nothing fancy. But the solution was really my problem statement was I wanted to listen to headphones and I didn't want to string wires across the room because again, small children don't want them dealing with excess cables, and the wife acceptance factor gets really low with the with long cables strung across the room. So I started with Bluetooth, and it worked remarkably well. I did battle latency a little bit up front. I had to get a transmitter receiver that supported low latency.
That was going to be my question.
It wasn't bad.
And when you start getting into those wireless solutions, you start getting latency like so I think it would also be helpful, like after you and I are done recording here, like send me a gear list of all of these things that you tried so I can link the audience. Like, we'll put links down in the description. So all the things that you described, they can do that. So
sure. I'll have to
sorry to interrupt, but go ahead and continue where you left off there.
Yeah, no problem. So definitely, I was up against many factors that were limiting the success of that option. But it was really straightforward. I was able to use any video source into my TV. The TV was the hub that would then take whatever source, whether it was streaming, Bluetooth, I'm sorry, not Bluetooth, Blu-ray. So streaming, Blu-ray, over-the-air antenna, whatever. It was just outputting that over the digital Toslink, and then I was wirelessly sending that.
Mm-hmm.
So simplicity was awesome. The downside, though, was I was up against many digital format conversions and a lot of room for latency issues.
Mm-hmm.
So the Toslink output from your TV is not great to begin with, right? It is digital, but it's serial digital with the clock embedded in the bit stream. It's not packetized digital like USB that's reclocked on the receiving end, right? This is a serial bit stream.
And it is also dirt cheap, right? Like those TV makers. Yeah. Those TV makers are not putting the best part selection and a whole lot of the budget towards that SPDIF output on the back of the TV.
Yep, it's a little blinky LED back there that shoots a light through plastic. It's not fiber optic. There's no lasers. No lasers were harmed in the creation of this format.
Yeah. Only the bits are harmed.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a jittery source to begin with, and then I was running it through a Bluetooth transmitter, which is lossy for the next step, and then receiving it, converting it back to Toslink in a $50 receiver, which I guarantee isn't doing anything to help the jitteriness of the SPDIF signal either. And then that going into the DAC had to do all the work to try to put Humpty Dumpty back together on the other end. And it was fine. It was functional. It was pretty low maintenance. The biggest challenge with it was just keeping the transmitter and receiver paired and turning them on and off and resynchronizing.
Okay.
But that was also the beginning of me realizing there's a lot of resampling going on in this process. The DAC that I had at the time showed the sample rate on it. And I would notice that the sample rate for some things I would listen to through it were 44.1, some were 48. And it was the beginning of me understanding that the digital bit stream coming from the source, whether it was streaming or Blu-ray, is encoded in a specific format. And the more times I convert it along the way to me listening to it, the more opportunity there is for degradation. Right?
Okay.
So I'm sitting there looking at this thinking, okay, I have a source coming into my TV in some format. It's being spit out in a dirty format across the Toslink, going through a lossy wireless link, on and on. So what can I do to improve this? So rather than fix it at the source, I decided to start cleaning things up. And I ended up picking up one of those iFi SPDIF reclockers. The little white SPDIF iPurifier things.
Okay. Again, we'll try to find that and link it down in the description.
Yeah. And I put it on the receiving end, and it was fine. It added to my latency problem, which was a continual problem for this over time. And really, that was the battle that I would fight would be, how do I keep the latency under control and resync the TV? I put delays in the TV so that it would display correctly.
So it's not so that not everything you watch is like one of those bad English dubs of a Japanese movie, right? Where you see their mouth move and then 2 seconds later you hear the sound.
Even with the solutions I have today that I think I've got it to a point that I really like, that still happens sometimes. I have to reset things to deal with latency every once in a while. So eventually I gave up on this. The Bluetooth link became enough of a maintenance concern. I started learning more about Bluetooth codecs and realizing that I was losing more in that than I wanted to. I started trying to play with LDAC, but in its low latency mode, it wasn't really any better in terms of losslessness. Um, and so I said, fine, I need to get away from this. I need to be a big boy and figure out how to run cables through walls or around the room so that I don't um, make the family upset with all of this.
Right. And that's where you get into this interesting balance. It's like you can hide wires when you string them, but that requires a lot longer runs because you've got to go around the perimeter of the room. You've got to tuck it behind things and all kinds of stuff like that. So,
You're absolutely right. So I went down the path. So I ended up doing really long Toslink cables, like 30 feet plus Toslink cables, which little blinky LED light through 30-foot long cable is even worse. That was actually a step backwards. It was so long. The sound quality was noticeably worse. It was just long Toslink cable.
Did you ever try an active cable there? Because like they do make those active. They call them active Toslink cables, and they have little repeaters on them that step up the level.
So I kind of jerry-rigged my own. I didn't know that existed actually. It's a really good idea, and it makes sense that it would exist. What I ended up using was a Toslink splitter as a repeater. So I'd run two short cables with a Toslink splitter in the middle, but with only one in, one out.
Gotcha.
And then
because usually those come with a little 5-volt power supply input on them. Yeah.
Yep.
That runs off like a phone power brick. Yep.
Put a linear power supply on it.
Of course you did, because you're an audiophile. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't matter. It was bad. It was all bad. Nothing good was happening here.
Okay.
And I shouldn't belittle it too much. It solved my problem, and it worked, actually. It wasn't that bad. It was flat. The soundstage depth wasn't good. And the left to right imaging wasn't great. It was blurred. The sound was blurred and not very far away from my face in the headphones.
Which is probably distracting, like when you're watching something and like the sound and the image are just not lining up together well,
exactly.
Spatially and all that.
You could tell there was an attempt at like a flyby, like a helicopter was supposed to fly by from left to right, but it just kind of hovered like right in front of your face a little bit and then disappeared. And it's all the jitter and the clocking that's going on with this bit of signal.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. I just jumping in real quick. Like, I think that's a really good example of like what happens when you start losing resolving power in your audio gear. In this case, it's because of jitter and all of that. But it's those really fine details, like all of those little spatial cues that you're talking about that are like often the first things to get lost. And so, your sound stage and your imaging starts to get mushy and all of that. So like that, I mean, that's why all of this is so important in there. But anyway, that was just a random thought that came up as you go. So keep going.
No, you're exact, but man, it's the right point though. What is it that I'm chasing here? And I want a good stereo image, and I want good sound depth. Like I know what good sounds like. I listen to lossless FLAC through this system. I know how good it can sound. And like when you watch a movie like, say, that has good music in it, like Kill Bill or Baby Driver or something like that, and then you listen to those songs actual recording losslessly, like this is wildly different. Like this is, I'm sure there's some mixing going on with the movie, but there's a lot that's lost. But
not only that, like when you're talking about like how do you know something sounds good or bad, or what is it supposed to sound like? Like, on my channel, when I do, sound reviews or gear reviews, I talk about like, how do I judge timbre? Well, it's like, I know what a human voice is supposed to sound like, right? Because we all know what a human voice is supposed to sound like. So make it sound like that, right? We, a lot of us know what have been in a room where an acoustic guitar has been played live, or a piano has been played live, those kinds of things. Well, with sound effects from movies and TV shows, like, you mentioned a helicopter. Most of us have heard a helicopter, right? Or a train. You've been stopped in your car at a railroad crossing, and you have heard and felt a train go by, right? Like, you know what that experience is supposed to be like. So, like, that's your reference point.
Oh, exactly. To me, the best reference has been when I may have learned this from you actually, because you do a good job of pointing out that real life is the best representation of real life, and so we should compare things to real life.
Right.
I think it's the physicist in you, right? The only real model of reality is reality.
Yeah.
But the one that I've learned to key in on, because I've heard a lot of it, is piano. And piano is surprisingly hard to reproduce really well, because it's percussive, but at the same time has a kind of a rich
string.
tonal, and and so I hear a lot of piano. My kids play piano. I've been fortunate enough to hear a lot of live piano recordings, and so that's the thing I've learned to key off of for myself.
Yeah.
Is this real?
Right. And so, like, that, I mean, so, like, back to the point that I was making is, like, when you have jitter in your signal chain, or if your system is just not well resolving, those subtle things that your brain picks up and cues in on, that, like, oh, hey, this is like a real life thing, like those spatial cues, okay? Like the decays of the piano strings as they are, you know, they were hit by a hammer, and now time goes on and they're starting to chill out, but that decay and there has such a lot of low level information in it that is like the first kind of stuff to get lost when you have jitter, when you have poor resolution, those sorts of things.
As you're describing it, you're reminding me of a lot of little pieces to this. Symbol decay to me is a really good one in terms of, do I have a loss in resolving power here? Am I losing some information? In movies and TV shows, rain.
That's a good one.
Does it feel like it's around me? And can I really get a sense of individual drops of water, or is it just a mush of static?
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the scene from Jurassic Park where the T-Rex comes out of the paddock for the first time and attacks the Jeep or the car right there. And it's raining. And just in all of this chaos of this giant dinosaur attacking this car and all of the sound effects, you know, attached to that. And like when the cables snap, they whip around the room if you have a surround sound system and all that, which is a good spatial test for your headphones as well.
Absolutely.
You know, but it's raining in that scene. And so it's like, can you hear the rain? Is the rain still around you, you know, when that happens? Yeah.
The movie that shocked me the first time with how good rain can sound on headphones is Blade Runner. When they were in kind of the downtown city scene towards the beginning of the movie and it's raining, I actually looked to see if it was raining, like next to me. Like I had this instinctive reaction to the sound.
Right. Another good one is if you're like in a scene, like you're in a police station or something like that, and a phone rings kind of off in the distance. You turn and you're like, wait, is our phone ringing? You know, like that's when you know you're getting it right. Anyway, we're getting a little off topic there. So continue with your builds.
So when I went to the long Toslink cable and the sound quality went backwards, a couple realizations. One, jitter through a long optical cable is really bad. And two, one of the things the Bluetooth was actually helping with maybe a little bit was it was digitizing that Toslink symbol in a packetized way to send it across Bluetooth. So the crappy output from the TV was actually kind of being mitigated a little bit. I was more limited by my receiving end. But really what it helped me understand was Toslink is not the answer. The serial digital format with the clock embedded in the bit stream was fundamentally not going to solve this for me. The convenience of everything being necked down through the TV and coming out that was super simple, but I was never going to win this battle just because of the initial format. And that is what led me down the path of how do I get to a USB audio output for this? How can I get my source to a USB output? So then I can run it longer distances without the same type of loss concerns or the same type of noise concerns, different noise concerns, but at least not the same ones with a serial bit stream. and trying to move in that USB direction.
Are you enjoying this content? Please help me keep it going by becoming a YouTube channel member. If you become a YouTube channel member, not only will you help me keep doing cool content like this, but you can get benefits such as being able to talk to me and my audio buddies on Discord, getting to watch my review videos early, or getting access to exclusive customers-only content. Head over to my YouTube channel and become a member today.
What that led me to was actually getting a NVIDIA Shield as a streaming box.
Yeah.
And a lot of nice qualities to that, but one of them is it has a USB 3 output. Not that 3 is magical, other than I ended up taking advantage of that later for optical USB cables. They jive better with USB 3 than USB 2.
Okay.
But what I did is instead of long Toslink cables, I got into long USB cables with powered repeaters because of the distance I was going.
Yeah.
But what I used was the NVIDIA Shield through a really long, like 30+ foot USB cable with a repeater in it, and then bringing that into a USB reclocker, then taking that into my DAC.
Okay.
Not that the reclocker was magic, but I had so much trouble with the length of the USB cable. Like, we were beyond spec for the length that we're shooting this thing across and having to power it and all that. What I ended up finding was a little...
I guess for context on that, Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about the room that you're doing this in? Like, how big is the room, and about how long are the runs, the cabling runs that you need in your application?
So I need a little over 30 feet. A 30-foot cable is really stretching it. So I'm in my office. The TV is on the opposite wall from the chair. So distance from TV to chair is maybe 15 feet.
Okay.
A little less than that. But I
so
run
a little
the
over 4 meters probably for the metric types over there. Yeah.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
And then I run all of my cables to my TV through the wall, and then out kind of along the baseboards. I have to snake it around a door jamb for a closet and then around the rest of the room. So 30 feet will get it around, but I end up having to use like 35 or 40-foot cables just for some margin to move things. So yeah, I'm watching it from across the room. I have to run cables around it rather than across it.
Yeah.
But the move to USB was really a good one, and it's one that I stuck with for a long time through a lot of iterations because it gave me a lot of flexibility on the playback end.
Okay.
So active USB cable into a USB reclocker, and the reason I did that was mainly from a power noise isolation and making sure everything was powered well. I had a little Singer USB to USB reclocker, and I wasn't so much worried about reclocking the digital packets as I was about noise that was picked up on the power and ground lines of a 30-foot, 40-foot long USB cable coupling into the input of my DAC. Even with a Bifrost 2 or better galvanically isolated USB input, there's still frequencies that can pass that, right? Galvanic isolation is not perfect.
No, it's not. And like you mentioned the Bifrost 2, like that one's got a transformer-based galvanic isolation in it rather than an optical. So like it's not the premium galvanic isolation either. Yeah.
Yep. But that was a big step up. That was the first time I really felt like it was sounding like it should when I switched to USB.
Okay.
And actually, I'm trying to think here. When did I? Oh, there was a step in between this.
Okay.
I messed with the HDMI ARC output into an HDMI ARC to SPDIF converter to get away from the blinking LED.
Yeah.
HDMI ARC is still the SPDIF format, especially when you set all the outputs to PCM. It's still serial digital bit stream, clock embedded with the bits. It's not. It looks like the format that uses the HDMI connector, not Yeah, the HDMI connector.
I squared S.
It looks like I squared S, but it's
Yeah.
not separating clock, bit, and word lines at all. It's all in one SPDIF. The reason HDMI ARC to SPDIF converters exist is because there really isn't a conversion to be done.
Right.
It's
just filtering it out, basically.
It's
filtering out the SPDIF. Yeah.
And changing the connector.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a little better than the blinky LED. That was a step up, and I was able to get a pretty good quality HDMI to Toslink converter that I then ran around the room. And that was better than blinky LED for sure, and had a lot of the convenience of Toslink because ARC is really nicely integrated with the system. At that point, also, one of the things that I've kind of mentally struggled with, and it took me a while to get over, was the format that I was streaming and playing from an audio perspective. 5.1 surround versus just setting it directly to stream stereo. Was I better off having it stream surround and then finding a way to locally downmix that into 2-channel stereo? Or was I better off just taking the 2-channel stereo stream?
Yeah. And this is a topic I want to return to because, like, when you're done with your part here, like, I've been experimenting with some of that too, and managing multi-channel audio when you're trying to integrate a headphone setup is definitely something that I have some thoughts on. So, what do you have here?
Oh, I never got to a great answer with that, other than it was so frustrating to figure out how to downmix it in a way that I could, like, live with myself as an audio fool. What I kind of just convinced myself of was, if I'm streaming from Netflix, I'm sure they're wanting their 2-channel stereo to sound as good as anything because a significant percentage of their listeners are listening to their movies on stereo in some format. Not surround sound. So I'm sure they're.
I have also found of the video streaming services, Netflix is near the top in overall audio and video quality. In my experience,
they vary significantly.
The services do vary from one to the other in that quality, but Netflix does a really good job. Now, the quality of their content you could argue, has gone downhill some over the years, but the technical quality of, like, the audio and visual fidelity is among the best out there.
Yep. I completely agree. So where I ended up with that, short version, I just stream the stereo version, and I'm really careful to go through the streaming app, the streamer, and any other devices that I have to make sure everything is set to either pass through 2-channel stereo, trying to eliminate all the resampling.
So, like, just to kind of
let me get one more bit into this. The upside to HDMI ARC and Toslink is it is not resampled. You're getting the 48 kilohertz version, or if for some reason it's streaming 44.1. That format is not resampling that. When you take those outputs and run them into a DAC that will tell you the sample rate, they're staying in the original format. And it will change depending on the source. When I went to the NVIDIA Shield, my biggest frustration with that, it was my favorite solution other than the software resamples to 48 kilohertz no matter what the source is. And some things stream in 44.1. And it just, maybe for no real reason, but from an audiophile underlying purist perspective, it just drove me nuts. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get a non-resampled version of the audio from my source. And that kept me coming back to HDMI ARC, that there had to be a better solution there. How can I get that output, which is in the right format, to my DAC in a clean way? And I did find one audiophile product, and I'll send you the link. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, And I know I sent it to you before. It's an audio file, HDMI ARC to um, uh, SPDIF output converter. And uh, it outputs over AES, it outputs over coax, it outputs over Toslink, and it was like $2,000.
Oh wow!
So I never tried it. I moved on because it was just impractical. But I've quit worrying about it as much, and now I sleep better at night. But it bothered me for a long time that things were being resampled, and I couldn't figure out how to stop it from getting resampled.
Yeah. All right. What's striking me about your explanation so far is like your approach has been to keep the signal in the digital domain as long as you possibly can, and like you're choosing to go your longer cable runs with digital cables, right?
Yes.
Be they the the Toslink that you're talking about, the HDMI ARC, or even the Bluetooth that was in there is a digital connection. And then, of course, the USB that you were talking about there. So your general approach has been TV, like video output there, or source, long digital run, and then it sounds like your equipment rack where your DAC and your amp is that you plug your headphone in is like right next to you.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. Good point. Yes. So my room is set up with a listening chair in the corner and the stereo rack next to it. So I've always had my main listening rig sitting to the right of my listening chair, with power supply at the bottom, DAC in the middle, headphone amplifier at the top, fancy overpriced cables between everything, all sitting right there. And from a system building perspective, my philosophy with it is it's easier to keep digital clean. So run digital over long, noisy distances, and then keep the analog short and sweet. Like I don't want a 20-foot headphone cable. I want a 20-foot digital cable and a 4-foot headphone cable next to me.
Yeah. All right. So what's your, did you have a current solution that you're using that you're semi-happy with?
So yes, maybe one or two more steps in between.
Yeah, sure.
Bluetooth from Toslink, long Toslink cables, HDMI ARC converters, all of that ultimately led to USB and an active USB cable. The frustration of running that over copper was all the noise that could be picked up kind of from an antenna perspective as it ran around the room. And that coupling in through the USB port. Not that I was worried about my bits getting corrupted so much as power and ground picking up noise from all of this. I ended up then going to an optical active USB cable, which was what I used for a very long time. NVIDIA Shield, HDMI 3 monoprice optical USB cable around the room into a USB reclocker just to have a termination point that I could control and put a nice clean power supply on. I didn't want to have that optical cable, USB cable going straight into my DAC. I wanted to control kind of the termination of it at my rack. So USB reclocker with a nice clean power supply on it. I also was big on power supply domains at the time. So that was run off of my PS Audio regenerator. The name of it's slipping my mind all of a sudden.
One of the power plants, probably.
Power plant, yes.
Yeah.
All of my headphone stuff ran off the power plant. So I had the optical USB coming in. It was then reclocked on a local USB reclocker that was powered off the power plant. I only had optical inputs to my system at the time. I had no copper coming into that. It was all isolated. And then that USB reclocker would go into the DAC. And so I lived with that for a very long time. And I liked it a lot. Conceptually, I had optical fiber coming into an optical Rendu for listening to music. I had optical USB coming in for watching movies. It had nice symmetry to it. It felt good. It listened. It sounded good. That was really some great sound quality. The optical cable was always a little bit of a maintenance thing. I would have to unplug it, plug it back in, reconnect it every few weeks or so because it would lose synchronicity. But I really didn't have any audio lag issues with that. But I was limited. What's the word for it? Oh, the reclocking to 48 kilohertz just drove me nuts. And I got tired of dealing with that. And at about that time, that's when I noticed that my optical Rendu supported Apple Airplay. And it supported Airplay 1, the lossless version, lossless, the 44.1 kilohertz version. It won't do 48.
Okay.
But what I realized is if I was willing to use Apple Airplay, I didn't even need the optical USB cable. It would all come in over the optical Ethernet cable that I had at the time because of the optical Rendu. Many endpoints support Apple Airplay, it turns out, but this is just what I happened to have at the time. And so I switched over, instead of using an NVIDIA Shield, to using an Apple TV and set it all up with Apple Airplay and ran that over hardwired Ethernet.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than running USB, I'm just running a network cable to my system, the same one that I run Rune across or any other of my streaming services.
Well, and those are already good at handling long cable runs.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, I got rid of the entire hardware interface problem and just turned it into kind of a software problem. And all the Apple stuff is pretty good at staying in sync. And at that point, I realized that unless I really go over the top with like that $2,000 plus SPDIF HDMI ARC reclocker setup, I'm not going to do any better. Like I've worked really hard at trying a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And Apple Airplay 1 through a good streamer sounded really, really good.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was simple. And so I really have landed at the point where I just use Apple Airplay now.
And how do you control that? Like, are you streaming through an Apple TV or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
gotcha.
I switched to an Apple TV.
Gotcha.
But I can, Ropey, the free USB or the free image for Raspberry Pis supports an option to force Apple Airplay 1 so it doesn't do the compression.
Okay.
The HoloRed supports Apple Airplay 1. The cord streamers for both the Mojo 2 and the Hugo 2 support Apple Airplay 1. The Sonora Rendus all support Airplay 1. And so what I found is by far this is the easiest. It's a lot like using Rune. I go into the Apple TV and I select which endpoint I want it to stream to for Apple Airplay, and it just sends it there. I send it to the HoloRed at my desk. I send it to the Mojo 2 or the Hugo or the Sonora Rendu, and it just plays. And it manages all the synchronization across the network, and it sounds as good and maybe even better than all of the other very complicated stuff that I tried.
So let's kind of let's summarize this here. So your general approach to using a nice headphone setup for movie and TV watching is you have chosen to do your long cable run in the digital domain, or at least like to transmit to your DAC in the digital domain, because your main listening rig is right next to your normal seating position. And so it makes sense to string digital there. And you did a whole bunch of stuff with various digital connections, had a lot of jitter issues and syncing issues and all of that, and ultimately landed on Apple Airplay 1 from an Apple TV through your Ethernet, through your home network and into a Sonor Ultra Rendu or optical Rendu. I can't remember which one you said. Or is it HoloRed now? Or are you using a HoloRed now?
I'm actually using a Cord Mojo 2 lately.
Mojo 2,
I have gotten very simple lately.
Okay.
And I'd even do that one wirelessly. And I just
Okay. Okay. Because that one, the Mojo uses the poly streamer, right? Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
That's what you did. All right. And you have found that to work really well for you.
Yep. If I was to make a recommendation to anyone, I would say don't use Toslink. If you can, or if your setup supports it, USB is a really good way to go, depending on the length of the run and the amount of effort you want to put into dealing with long cables.
Yeah.
And if you are using Apple products, Apple Airplay is, especially if you have ones that can force Airplay 1, it sounds great. You're going to work really hard and spend a lot of money to do much better.
Did you know you could buy access to individual review videos over on Patreon? That's right, over on Patreon, you can buy individual videos from my review library, both before their public release and commercial free, for just $5 or $3, depending on what kind of video it is. Head over to patreon.com/wavetheory1 for more info. Okay. Well, that's cool, and like that's definitely like a way to do this is to string the digital, and I've tried that too. So like let me explain a little bit of like the things I have tried here, and then we can get your thoughts on that as well. So I have not used headphones for movie and TV watching a whole lot. I do have like a 7.1 channel home theater system in the family room of my house. And it's set up in there, and like the whole family uses it. Like we watch a lot of shows and movies together, and that sort of thing. But there still are those moments when, you know, someone has gone to bed and you still want to watch something, or you know, the partner is having a meeting, some kind of online meeting, or you know, various things where it's like headphones would make a lot of sense. So in my room, it's not entirely dissimilar to yours, except for I don't have my main headphone listening rig right next to my normal seating position. My main headphone rig is in a different room entirely, right? So what I have is like the main equipment rack, which is like it's an all-in-one rack that's got like a TV stand in it, and it's like it got wall mount brackets built into it. So and then like an old Panasonic plasma TV, which I'm still using, 1080p plasma TV. Still looks so organic and wonderful and natural in that image, which like I'm going to use it until it dies because it looks so beautiful. Yes, exactly. Right. So that's mounted on there, and then on the shelves underneath it, like I've got an old Denon, still old because I bought this stuff years ago, but it's still going strong and still sounding great in the home theater application. Old Denon AVR, which I think might be AVR 2313 CI. Like it's old, right? Like 2012, like around there is when this one came out. And then I have like a Sony Blu-ray player in there, and then a bunch of streaming devices. Like all of my home theater stuff is like it's older, so it doesn't have like smart TV apps and all of that in there. So we've got a Roku Ultra in there, and we have an Apple TV 3 in there. And I also have a Chromecast, and that's going to become important here in a moment. There. And so I have tried a couple of different things, because again, there's no like main listening rack of headphone gear right next to me within arm's reach, generally speaking. Okay. So one solution that you can do, like in a situation like that, where you have a home theater system and you want to sit down and you want to watch something, but it's late at night and the kids are sleeping, or your partner is off, you know, doing their thing and you don't want to distract them, kids are studying, etc., etc. Like one thing that you can do is just get a really long headphone cable and plug it into the headphone output of your AVR. Okay. But that sucks, right? I'm going to tell you, like that's bad for, like, it just does not sound very good. For one thing, the headphone outputs on a lot of AVRs, they just have a resistor on there to like really give a high output impedance, which is fine if you're gonna use like a 300 ohm Sennheiser or a 250 ohm or 600 ohm Bayer headphone, that kind of thing. But those are not as common anymore. And then also like how you talked about how the optical and the HDMI ARC outputs on the back of a TV are not always the best, right? Particularly the Toslink optical, right? The headphone output on those AVRs is often just noisy and just not very good, right? And then, of course, you've got to buy a 10-foot, 12-foot, 15-foot, whatever headphone cable that you're going to string it across the room, and then hope no one ever walks past, or, just not have a dog or a cat or anything like that that's going to come and trip that cable. Yeah. So that is one solution. That doesn't work very well, I have found there. Also for reference here, I should say that my TV screen and the couch where I sit are probably about 12 feet apart in my room as it is set up right now. And then in my room, like the TV and the couch are on opposite walls. And then on the wall that connects those two walls, there is a fireplace, right? Which is rather large. So the TV is not above the fireplace, but it's on the wall, like, around the corner from the fireplace.
It limits your cable runs. You can't go that way easily.
Well, and I got to go up and over. I do have a bunch of cables going up and over the mantle because like it's surround sound. The other thing about this room is like my house is like it's either called a multi-level or a split-level house, wherever, depending on the region where you live, where you've got like a ground level floor for half the house, and then the other half of the house's footprint, you've got like a 2-story section where you have one half flight of stairs that goes to a garden level and another half flight of stairs that goes up to often like where the bedrooms are and that sort of thing, right? And so my family room is on that garden level, so it's half underground. And the nice part about that is that along the foundation wall, which is behind me, actually, it's behind the couch where this happens, there is a nice shelf built into the wall about 4 feet or so off the floor. Right? 4.5 feet, something like that off the floor, which is a good like 8 inches or so deep. And so it is the perfect place to put like bookshelf surround speakers. For one thing, they can just sit right on that foundation wall. Now they have to be front ported so I can push them up against the wall behind them. Okay. But it works well there. Front ported or sealed. I've gone front ported. Anyway, but that also gives me a good place to like, bundle speaker wires together and like just shove them down into a corner and tuck them away out of sight enough where they, they're not just, strung out all over the place, right? Okay, so some of those wires do go up and over the mantle. Now, what I have discovered is that if I put a headphone amplifier up on the mantle on the corner that's closest to the end of the couch where I sit, right? I typically sit, right? We all have that spot on the couch. We like to sit and we get that Homer Simpson butt groove going on in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sheldon Cooper style.
Yep.
Nobody
exactly.
takes my spot.
Yes, very much so. Right. No, I've never actually physically hauled a kid out of that spot. No, never. Not me. Right. Yeah.
But it's my spot.
That's it. Yeah. What I've discovered is like that mantle up there is the right depth where I can put a pretty decent headphone amplifier or a DAC amp and all of that and get away with about a 2 to, anywhere from a 2 to 3 meter long headphone cable, which is not bad. That is just out of arm's reach though for being able to like reach over just by hand, adjust the volume on the amplifier. Okay. Or wherever it is you control volume. So I've tried a few different approaches here to integrating headphones into this setup. And it kind of started with, in earnest, it kind of started with the FIO K19 DAC and headphone amp kind of built in there. And the reason why I started with that one is because it's got that HDMI pass-through on it, right? It has full HDMI audio and video input and output. And so what I did initially is I put that between my AVR's monitor, HDMI monitor output and the TV. And it passed video through just fine, but got no sound.
Oh.
And what I realized then is because the AVR was just stripping all of the sound out of that HDMI signal, because it figures you don't want to send audio to the TV because you've got it going through your speakers, right? Which makes sense. And so once I figured that out, I'm like, well, okay, that's going to be a clunky solution, because I either have to turn off the speakers and tell it to send the audio to the TV and thus through the FIO. And then remember to turn it all back on, like all of the speakers back on before my kid comes in to use it the next day and is like, why am I not getting any sound? Like that kind of thing, right?
Low wife acceptance factor solution.
Exactly. So that's a lot of complexity that I didn't need. And this also reminds me of, like I mentioned this earlier, like another challenge behind like integrating headphones into a home theater system like that is managing multi-channel audio.
Yes.
Because even though that FIO K19 has an HDMI pass-through on it, it will only handle stereo audio. It will not downmix multi-channel. It has no Dolby Digital or DTS decoding or anything like that, right?
Yeah. You may just get the front left and right channel.
Not even. You just don't get sound. If it detects multi-channel, at least that's the way the FIO worked. And it took me a while to figure that out, right? I was like pulling my hair out, making my widow's peak here even worse.
Where's my sound?
Because I'm like, where's the sound? Yeah, exactly. It was getting video just fine, no sound, right? And so that's one thing that I learned. So a hot tip for any of the listeners out there: if you're trying to get headphones into a home theater system and you're not getting any sound through an HDMI pass-through like that, it might be because you're trying to send multi-channel audio through a device that only handles 2-channel audio, right? And so that might be a setting thing that you need to check out. All right. So like you, I tried running a long optical cable, and I got I'm pretty sure it's an active one. I'll put a link down in the description below, because I needed one that was, fairly long, like you're talking about, because by the time you go from behind the system along the bottom of the wall, up the wall so that it's nice and clean looking, tuck it in behind on that shelf, go up and around the mantle and all that, get to the corner of that mantle that I was just talking about there. Like it's at least 25 feet to do that comfortably, maybe closer to 30. Right.
Oof. Yeah.
And like I was, and I would listen to that, and kind of a lot like you, it's like there was noisy. It was like there was just always this like little white noise in the background. Okay. Using that FIO K19 again as kind of the test case there, I was like, boy, this is just a noisy connection. And like you were talking about, the spatial presentation was just not believable. And it would be distracting if there'd be pans, sonic pans across the, whatever I was watching. And so I was like, ugh, this is bad. Is it just the cable length? So I got like a short HDMI cable and just like moved the DAC amp to like right on the TV's rack. A 1.5 meter long cable. Tried it. I just stood there to listen to it just to get an idea of what it was like. It's like, well, it's a little bit cleaner, but not much. It's still pretty bad, right? And it just came down to like, that was how I discovered that Toslink optical output on the back of the TV was just kind of garbage, right?
Yeah.
So then the next thing that I tried was the HDMI ARC, as you were talking about there, and that sounded a lot better, sounded a lot cleaner. Even did a long run again, got an active cable, strung it up along there, and that was good. Though I think the age of my TV started to be a problem there, because like it would kind of cut in and out every now and then. And
did the K19 does the K9 sorry to interrupt you, does the K19
no, go ahead,
directly support ARC?
I think so.
Okay. Because as you're talking about this, it's reminding me that the one that I wanted to try in this mode that you're talking about and never did was the Ferrum Wandla with its ARC input.
Yeah.
And to
I have
try
the
to come
Von
up
La
with a way to
GSE
do
on
a
my
really,
desk right now, actually. Yeah.
so there's a way to get a good quality arc signal to it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that may be a good solution.
A possible solution. So I did try it, and it did sound good when it was working, but I think my problem there was my old TV, just like not having like the most up to date codecs, or just not functioning very well. I think that was likely the issue there on that. But again, when it was working, it sounded much better, right?
Yep.
So to the audience, that is, as Erik is saying, that is one solution. Is you can find one of the small handful of DACs out there that have HDMI ARC, okay, on them, right, and connect to your TV that way, and that's usually coming directly from the TV, so it's already doing any multi-channel down mixing for you, all of that kind of stuff on it, and so you don't need to worry about multi-channel management in that case. A reminder to returning listeners and information for new listeners is that on this podcast, I really have a goal of introducing relatively unknown music artists to our music-loving hobby. Past episodes have had featured music artists with music clips and then an end-of-episode demo track in its entirety from musical acts that you've probably never heard of. So, if you are such an artist or you know such an artist who would like that free exposure before our music-loving hobby and audience, please contact me and we will get them in the rotation. All right, we'll go ahead and finish up this show on integrating headphones into video-based content.
Yep.
All right. Theo also sent me their S15 for review.
Okay.
And I have done a review, and that has like the same kind of digital section on it that the K19 does. The K19 is a fine piece as a DAC and a DAC and all that, but the amplifier in it, it's a THX amp and not a particularly good one. Okay, in my memory there. And so that became its own issue. The S15 though is just a DAC and a streamer in there, and I guess technically a preamp if you want to call it that. So then it was like, well, do I stay in the digital domain and put the S15 up on my mantle and stack a headphone amp on top of it, or do I put the S15 in my equipment rack on there? And that's the one that won, because for one thing, the S15 is full rack size. It's 17 inches wide, right?
Oh, geez.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I stacked it right underneath my Sony Blu-ray player, and they are the same, almost the same footprint, at least in terms of width. The S15 is deeper.
And that is one of the real benefits of what you're talking about, right? It supports Bluetooth players really well. It supports rack integration really well. It's clean.
Yeah. And so, like, it's just sitting on my equipment rack, and it's still there because it's really good in this application. But the problem then is that I lost the ability to transmit digitally from the TV source, like where that was, up on that corner of the mantle that was close to my position. Now, the upshot of that is the S15 has balanced analog outputs. And I think this is one application where balanced interconnects clearly become advantageous, because that XLR balanced connection, if you got to do a long run, right, 30-some feet, and you're talking about it being in the middle of an equipment rack where you've got a television and an AVR with a bunch of speaker cables coming in and out of there, and HDMI cables everywhere, and 2 or 3 different HDMI sources, et cetera.
Yep.
Right. That balanced signal run is a lot better at noise rejection.
You're getting into what that format was invented for. Long audio runs.
Yeah, exactly. So
good idea.
So that S15 right now, it is doing DAC duties for the video-based content that I want to do. It also is a nice streamer, has a nice streamer in it too. So it's like, it's also connected to my AVR. So if I want to just play Rune on my home theater system audio, it's right there. Okay. And it's kind of nice because there have been times where the partner and I have been sitting on the couch at night, and she was like, what was that 90s song that kind of went, and like starts humming it out or something like that. I'm like, oh, I think it was. And then I can just pull up Rune really fast and just, play it right there. We're like, was that the one? Or like, no, anyway, that's another matter. But
fancy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, the way that worked out then is like S15 digital XLR connection up around the mantle there. And then the amp that has been sitting up there because it just fits most neatly on that mantle is the little Lake People G111 Mark II. Okay. Which is, plenty of power and all of that. Then, that drives most of any of the headphones I would want to try in this application for the most part.
Good use.
It is. That. But it doesn't have a remote control, because the other part about this is like I have to have remote controllable volume somewhere. But comes back to the S15 is also a preamp with variable output, so I can just use its remote and just set the volume of the G111 to whatever I need it to be. There.
That is the other battle of the digital bit stream for this, though, is volume control. Everything wants to control volume if you're not careful. And so getting the volume maxed out on every step of the chain, except for the one you want to control volume on, becomes a real thing. Even with like my AirPlay solution, I have to turn the volume. When I stream AirPlay to the Cord Mojo 2, I want the Mojo to do the volume control, not the Apple AirPlay. So I turn the volume all the way up on the Apple TV, so that it's not doing any signal reduction. That's then sent over the network to the AirPlay, and then that does local volume control at the headphone amplifier.
Yeah.
But when I want to listen through my little 2-channel active speakers that I have in my room, just for basic background listening with a show on the TV, I stream to a Raspberry Pi. And I want the volume control to be through the TV, so I turn it up to the 0 gain setting on the active speakers, and then digitally control the volume by remote through the AirPlay. So there's sometimes I want digital volume control because the signal chain. Sometimes I want analog control, and making sure that you kind of manage that so that you don't have two things trying to control volume at once. Can sometimes be tricky.
Yeah. So the last thing about this setup that I'm talking about here, where I've got that FIO S15 streamer DAC in my equipment rack, and then a long XLR balanced analog connection up to a headphone amp, and I can swap out the headphone amp for review purposes and all of that kind of stuff, but up to a balanced connection headphone amp up there on the mantle, is I still had to figure out what to do with multi-channel, right? Because my home theater system, again, like it is intentionally multi-channel because it's a 7.1 channel speaker-based home theater system. And it needs to be speaker-based because most of the time that system gets used, we are watching something together with, 2 or more people in the family in there. So, headphones are a no-go there. But so for the few times that I need headphones, it was like, okay, everything here is set up for multi-channel, but the FIO devices, and this is a limitation, a current limitation, I think, of integrating headphones into video-based systems like this, is none of the headphone or all of the headphone gear is 2-channel, which makes sense because there's only 2 transducers, one on either side of your head. Right. But, a lot of the content that is out there is 5.1 channel or higher. Right. So headphone based gear, like, again, they haven't licensed out Dolby decoding or DTS decoding, that kind of stuff, because that would add to the cost of the unit for one. and all that. So now I'm stuck in this situation of like, how do I do this down mixing? What's the solution here? And I mentioned my Chromecast earlier, and I found that the best solution that I could come up with here, which is imperfect, but it's like the best and most user-friendly solution for my system and for like my use case, is I plugged the Chromecast. I pulled it out of my AVR and I plugged it into the back of the S15, into its HDMI pass-through. And then I went HDMI output from the S15 into the input that was inhabited by the Chromecast on the back of the AVR. Okay. And then I set the Chromecast to only stream from the streaming services 2-channel audio instead of multi-channel. So kind of like what you did, I was like, well, I'm banking on the fact that the direct stereo stream from Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO now, whatever they call the HBO app these days. It's gone through like 8 name changes or something like that. Any of those streaming services. Okay. That the 2-channel direct stream there is better than taking their 5.1 and down mixing it somewhere. Is that actually true? I don't know. I've not been able to find an effective way to actually compare and see which one sounds better, but that's the gamble that I have made here.
Well, and you also pointed out actually an interesting trade-off that you run into. Are you prioritizing video quality or audio quality, and which one are you stripping off first from your data stream? Right? You went from previously you were running it through the TV, and the TV takes the audio or takes the video, and then it retransmits the audio. Now you're sending the whole signal to your audio device, taking off the audio, and then sending the video along to the TV.
Yeah.
You're having the audio go through fewer steps now instead of having the video go through fewer steps.
Right. So, and then like the other trade-off there then is like the one thing that I can't do in this setup is use the headphones if I want to watch something disc-based. Because the Blu-ray player goes directly into the AVR and then onto the TV and all of that. And so that is the sacrifice that I had to, the big sacrifice, and why I say it's still an imperfect solution. Because if I have just gotten a new Blu-ray disc, like for example, like not long ago, I picked up the Blu-ray of the most recent Mission Impossible movie, right? And I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because it's disc-based and it just, all of that kind of stuff. Like, when am I going to watch it? I'll get to it eventually. Okay, but if I needed to watch that through the headphones, it's not really an option. Right, I can only do streaming content in the way that I have this set up, and I that unfortunately is one of the realities of integrating a headphone-based system or a headphone rig into your movie watching experience right now.
The only workaround I have found to that, I'm not sure this is a real workaround because it's massively complicated if you aren't really set up for this already, is to use a local Plex server.
Okay.
I went through the pain at one point of ripping all of my Blu-rays into ISO on my NAS, and then stream them locally over my network through Plex. So it's still streaming. It doesn't actually solve it, but the workaround is all my discs just live on a hard drive.
Yeah.
But that is a very time-consuming and expensive workaround if you aren't already set up for it for other reasons.
Now, if your movie watching experience, like, because I know that there are 2-channel audio people out there that they just watch movies or shows on their 2-channel system. They've got a TV set up in their main 2-channel rig, and so like if they use disc-based content from a Blu-ray player or whatever, like that Blu-ray player is already set up to just output 2-channel audio instead of the multi-channel bit stream. And so it's not an issue in that situation, but like for the situation I described where you have a full-fledged home theater surround sound system,
Yep.
You kind of have to make some choices, or you have to be prepared for the reality that you may have to go into the menu settings of your AVR or one of your pieces of gear and just constantly switch back between surround and stereo and hope that you never forget.
Yep. Yeah. Hope for the best.
Hope for the best. Right. So we're a little bit past an hour here, and so I hope this was helpful for the audience, because what we're talking about here is not necessarily recommendations for exactly which DAC do you need to buy or which amp or which headphone do you use for this, because just like listening to music, the headphone that you use is the one that sounds the best to you, the one that helps you get lost in whatever you're watching the easiest, and then keeps you engrossed in that content. Right? That's the answer. And that's an individual experience for everyone. We are really talking more about the nuts and bolts of how do you actually get the content into the headphones. And it's not always super straightforward. As we've talked about
it's
here.
Not. It's a good reminder to me of how nice services are like Rune or Audirvana. Yeah, network streaming solutions, how easy they've made it for us to get high quality audio across the network into a good setup. Yeah. And it's just, I can imagine listening to this conversation is very almost convoluted, because it genuinely is convoluted to come up with a good way to get high quality audio into a good headphone setup. That's how I landed at. It's kind of a compromise solution, but it's the easiest with good enough quality with Apple AirPlay.
Right.
And I think you've come up with a great analog solution with running the XLR cables.
Yeah.
Right? But it doesn't feel like there's a great answer to this. It's just a good enough answer.
And honestly, I may be alone on this, and there's going to be some home theater fans and all of that don't agree with me. I personally am not quite as picky or as distracted by slightly imperfect audio when I'm watching a show or a movie as I am when I'm listening to music.
Oh, okay.
And the reason, I think the chief reason for that is when I'm listening to music, that's frequently all I'm doing. I'm like kicking back in my listening chair, putting my feet up and just closing my eyes and just saying, all right, it's music time. Right? That happens a lot. Whereas with a movie or a show, it's like, okay, sure, I'm putting my feet up on the ottoman that I have in front of the couch and I'm kicking back, but I'm following a story, right? My eyes are doing as much work as my ears are doing, and my eyes and my ears are working in concert to follow what's going on with this narrative that's unfolding. And then you got all these visuals and, all of that kind of stuff on there. And so just because of the multi-sensory aspect of watching a show or a movie, there's just a little bit less brain space, I think, for me and most likely for most people, that last, when we talk about audio gear for music listening, you keep talking about, we audiophiles trying to chase that last 5% or that last 1% or, whatever that case may be. I haven't felt as nearly as much a need to do that with the audio for movie and TV watching, right? Like I'm still using that, 13 or 14-year-old Denon AVR, which isn't the best of everything anymore, but man, does it still sound really good. And boy, do I get lost in watching whatever it is that I'm watching when that thing is cranking, right? So, and that's just my 2 cents on that. And no one is obligated to have the same opinion that I do there. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Erik?
Boy, I think the point that you're making there at the end is really the right one, right? It's about enjoyment. It's about getting caught up and lost in it, right? There's an aspect of this. I want to be in the world of what I'm listening to, whether it's music or a movie. Right. And finding a way to get lost in that. Yeah. When you need to be a little bit isolated, right? Headphones bring that piece to it. You don't have to be in a room that can be in surround sound. You can be in headphones.
And we've certainly covered some areas where that gets lost, like the jitter situation we were talking about with long optical runs out of the back of the TV. Like that's a situation where it's like, okay, I'm not getting lost in the content. It's too distracting with this audio quality, right?
Yep.
So forth.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do think with a reasonable amount of effort, you can really get a good headphone setup for watching movies that is very engaging, to the point where it'll trick you into thinking things are moving around you and behind you. To me, it's been worth the effort. I really enjoy good movies with headphones. And to the point where when I am critical of surround sound setups that don't sound as good as my headphone setup.
So I'm not quite there. I do think that surround sound setup. Yeah, I do think that my surround sound setup, even as aged as it is at this point, still outperforms my headphones, particularly when you talk about the actual spatial aspects where overhead pans really go overhead, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. Whereas you're getting close to that with a really good pair of headphones off of a nice clean signal chain, but not quite there. But I would argue that a good pair of headphones for movie watching is probably more engaging than a standard like stereo 2-channel system where the speakers are only out in front of you. Okay, I think I'm comfortable making that claim. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot less money.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, again, to the audience, it's like we weren't really here to tell you buy this specific DAC, this specific amp. This was really more about like, how do you just do it at all? How do you get headphones in there at all? And I hope we've given you some good tips and some things to consider and think about, and maybe some problems to avoid if you're going to go down this path. But Erik, thanks so much for being a guest again and helping us work through this.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was really good.
Good to be here.
Yeah. All right. And to the audience, thanks for listening, and we will catch you all later. Another big thanks to Erik for coming on and discussing this topic here, and I hope you as the audience found that interesting and helpful and have some good ideas on how you can even get headphones into your movie watching rig in the first place. All right, thanks again everybody for listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Enjoy the music, everyone.